in single family homes, it was hard to kind of create processes and wash, rinse, repeat because every house was a little bit different. Whereas in manufactured housing, I like being able to kind of set up a process for the right way to do something and then do that over and over again and kind of perfect that and hone it, but at least start out with something where I knew it would be repeatable.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 444. My guest today believes that mobile home communities are a vital part of the solution to today's housing affordability crisis. Sam Hales is the founder of Saratoga Group, which has over $300 million in assets under management. Saratoga Group was founded in 2011 and is exclusively focused on the purchase, revitalization, and operation of mobile home communities. Today, Sam is going to discuss the benefits of investing in manufactured housing and the steps he took to vertically integrate his growing company. Sam, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you. That was quite the introduction. It's great to be here having this conversation with you.
Why don't we start off? Just what's the difference between mobile home parks and manufactured housing? Are they the same thing?
They're pretty much the same thing. If you look back at the history of kind of the nomenclature, mobile homes there's kind of a HUD date where we call it pre-HUD homes. Those are kind of the mobile homes. The modern homes would be manufactured housing. But really, like if you go to any of these industry events, everybody's trying to change the nomenclature to say manufactured housing because mobile homes, trailer parks, really, that's what we're trying to get away from. We're trying to get away from kind of that vision, I guess you could say, and looking at something that's more modern, which is what these new homes are. It's a totally different product than what it used to be.
Why manufactured housing then? What is it that brought you into that asset class?
When I founded Saratoga Group, like you said, in 2011, we originally were just doing single-family homes. This was in the greater San Francisco Bay Area. And it was, we had a number of different homes and we're kind of bouncing around to different geographies within the Bay Area, which is actually a really big area. And it just wasn't that efficient. We got in at a good time. We were buying homes in 2009, 2010, founded Saratoga Group in 2011. But so I was looking for something that was going to be more efficient. But I did the single family homes for about 6 years up until 2016. And then I started looking for something that not only was going to be more efficient and more scalable, but also would do well during a downturn. And silly me, I thought way back then in 2017 that prices were too high. Just when I looked at like cash on cash multiples and that sort of thing. And anyway, that led me to manufactured housing. And the fact that it's like instead of one door, you could be in a community, there were maybe 200 residents. And the other part of it is in single family homes, it was hard to kind of create processes and wash, rinse, repeat because every house was a little bit different. Whereas in manufactured housing, I like being able to kind of set up a process for the right way to do something and then do that over and over again and kind of perfect that and hone it, but at least start out with something where I knew it would be repeatable. So anyway, those are some of the things that kind of attracted me to manufactured housing.
Take us through your first deal that you did in manufactured housing. What was it? What did it look like? And what were some of the terms?
We now own 106 mobile home parks. That very first one is the only one we've sold. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. So I wouldn't buy that same park today. It was in California. And that's actually the first thing that would remove it from my acquisition list. But it was in California, close to where I was living. Relatively small. It was about 60 units. And it was also a private utility. So it was a private well that serviced the community and also a private sewer system that serviced the community. And those are also a couple of things that you don't get super excited when you're in our space. You want to have public utilities if you can.
Why is that? Why do you want to have public utilities?
Especially if it's a community of that size. So what happens is, let's say you have a wastewater treatment plant or a lagoon or some other private sewage system. If you have a problem, it's not like, oh, okay, well, we need to fix those pipes. That problem could mean the EPA is involved. It could mean, things that lead to big money, big capital expenses that you're going to need to put out a new wastewater treatment plant. At least it cost you $1 million. If you're spreading that over just 60 spaces, that could really wreck your investment. So that's the main thing. It's just kind of that, it's a ticking time bomb. Nothing lasts forever, right? So if it's not, it's one thing if you've got a sewer bill and that wastewater treatment plant, wherever it's going, the public utility, yeah, they're going to have upgrades or whatever, but that's not a huge capital expense for you. It might be a little bit of increase in your sewer rate at some point, but anyway, that's the main reason. And then on the other side, the wells, I mean, now you're talking about people's drinking water. If you have a problem there, that can really be an issue because, you no longer have safe water for your community.
Did you run into those types of issues with that first park that you bought?
We did not. However, we've subsequently bought a park in Illinois, and we knew this going in. It was part of a portfolio purchase, but that particular park had a poisoned well, and there was city water right outside of the community. And our solution was, we were going to push to get it hooked up to city water. That was a big lift. I mean, it was hard to kind of get those approvals to do it, but we eventually did. So we've kind of been through that. It was from the previous owner. They had the EPA involved. They had the not the district attorney, the attorney general involved for the state of Illinois. I mean, it was, like I said, it was a big project, but we were able to get that approved and then hooked up to city water.
So, Sam, what would you have done then if on that second park you bought or that portfolio package you got, you weren't able to hook up to city water? What options would have been available to you?
It was definitely calculated risk on our part. As part of the agreement, with the seller, we had an indemnity where they were indemnifying us against any of the issues that may have happened in the past associated with that well. Worst case is, we didn't want to go here, but this is what has happened in some cases, is you bring in water, you truck it in to people to make sure that they have, clean water for drinking and that sort of thing. We were confident we could figure it out at some point. The other alternative was to dig another deep well. This is in the Midwest, where, as you know, the wells have to go pretty deep, and then build another treatment system. That's actually what the previous owner was trying to do. We just didn't think that was a good solution because eventually that was probably going to have problems as well. So we had to get the mayor involved, and they didn't want to give it to us. And we knew that going in, but we got attorneys involved and that sort of thing to really push for. It was a big community. It's 386 spaces. Like this, it's like a small town. They needed clean water. And so we felt like we would get it at some point. We did.
Why was the mayor and the other people at the table, why were they opposed to allowing you to do this? And then did it really just come down to the lawyers and spending a lot of money on legal to get it done?
Well, it was interesting. As we were doing our due diligence, I actually walked into the, kind of the utility commission there. And this is Rockford, Illinois, kind of west of Chicago. And I told them that we were in escrow to buy this community. And their response was, we want to see that community shut down. And I said, well, why is that? And his response was, well, we've got a lot of affordable housing here in Rockford. We want to see that turned into kind of an industrial build out because there were other industrial things near there and it's close to the Rockford airport. So we just kind of had a little bit of a back and forth as I talked about, well, property taxes in Illinois. Yeah, I mean, $200,000 home might sound affordable, but you think about those property taxes and your payment. I mean, I was like, the people that live in our community, it's about that monthly payment and what their income is relative to the payment they can afford. They cannot afford to buy one of these $150,000, $200,000 homes. So there was just kind of some of these sorts of discussions that went on. We really didn't have to get too aggressive with the attorneys. There had been discussions over the years, but I think once they figured out like we weren't going to back down, we were very serious about kind of resurrecting this community and making sure they had clean water there. at that point, they responded relatively quickly.
Have you ever found that there are municipalities and local governments that embrace mobile home communities, or are they all somewhat opposed to them for different reasons? And then, how do you change that perception?
I embrace, boy, that would be awesome. That has not happened. And we've been in, I will say that there's definitely different temperatures, let's say in the Southeast relative to California, right? Which is probably the worst that we've experienced, or even Illinois. But even then, there's always kind of that stigma that's hard to overcome. I understand it, because most of the time, what we're buying would be what we would look at and call a trailer park. I mean, it's like there's potholes in the roads, there's abandoned cars, the grass is long. I mean, not always, but we buy a number of communities like that. And so I can understand why that feels like a blight to the neighbors or to the community. But what we found is when we go in, and always within the first 60 days, like, we're going to hit it with some sort of large capital project, whether that's redoing the roads, big tree campaign, because a lot of times the trees are way overdone. Those are the two most common ones. But we're gonna really go in there and immediately start changing the perception and start changing the aesthetic and the look of the community. And our experience is, as we do that, then when we go back in 6 months later and talk about, well, hey, this or that we'd like to do, and we get a much more of a reception, because they see that we're not just saying things and not going to execute on it, but we're serious about making it a better community.
So you like to go in with a show of force and just show, hey, we're going to put some money and some investment into this community. Does that have a big impact on the residents of that community too? And what kind of change in attitude do you normally see?
It absolutely does. It's, what we've learned, and I feel like my experience in mobile home park investing is almost like getting a degree in human psychology, because if you think about it this way, you buy a community and there are no rules, or at least nobody's keeping the rules. But if you start talking to the residents, they're like, their grass is long and they've got toys and other things scattered around. And they'll start complaining about the people next door, what a mess their stuff is or whatever. So once you start implementing the rules, and it's like, no, we're cleaning up, right? Because we're going to put the new roads in, we're doing these other things. And now we're also requiring everybody else to clean up their place. It changes the mentality. Everybody feels like, okay, yeah, I see how much improvement there is, and I want to do the same. And it's really refreshing to see just kind of that ownership that people take once they see that, as for us, as the owners of the park, that's what we're doing. We're trying to establish that, lead with that. We find that other people respond in kind.
What are some of the other main challenges that you encounter when you take over a mobile home park? And, have there ever been any that you really haven't been able to get over or get past?
Some of the main challenges are based on the municipality and the support that's there. So, for example, this isn't necessarily common, but there have been times when we've had some pretty major criminal activity in a community that we bought. We bought one in outside of Columbus, Georgia. And we knew there were issues going in. We didn't understand how serious they were. We actually had to get the FBI involved. And that was a difficult, it was just, again, it was a consistency to just, you're getting the police, you're getting these people involved so that the criminal activity, at some point they're like, oh my gosh, this just isn't worth it. We need to go somewhere else. They'll leave us alone and we can take care of our nefarious deeds or whatever. So that's been, I'd say, one of the biggest challenges that we've had is kind of encountering some of that criminal activity. But again, it's just consistency and just persistence to make sure that people know we're just not going to take it. It's not acceptable. But it's way more. So, that was Columbus, Georgia. We try to do the same thing in California. We don't get the same help. And so that's one of the for us, it's not just, landlord friendly versus tenant friendly. It's being able to do what we do, which is to help turn a community around. We've got to have local support. We can't, we're not the law. We can't enforce the law. And if we're not going to get that support, that'd be one of the reasons we don't invest in California.
What is your template for success then? I mean, you own a certain number of parks. I think what did you say? Over 100
106.
106 communities. So you must have like a template. You're looking for a certain thing. You go in, you do a certain thing. If you do it right, then there's a certain return at the end of it. What does that look like for you?
So we play the long game, number one. So to us, the most important thing is that we're going to buy a community in an area where we're going to be able to infill the community with new homes or used homes at a decent velocity. Because our average community is probably 60% occupied when we buy it. And so, we've got lenders that we work with, Clayton Homes, other manufacturers, and we're buying dozens, tens, even, I think this quarter we're doing about 55 homes this quarter.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com.
When you say you're buying the homes, you mean you're buying the actual manufactured home that goes on the lot in the community?
That's correct.
And then are you renting that out, or are you leasing it to purchase, or how does that work?
Could be any of the above. If we're basically, trying to sell that home, or maybe some sort of a lease to purchase contract. We've done some rental. We prefer not to, but depending on the market, we will also rent the homes out. It's any of those things. But anyway, that's an important piece. And so if that's our model, on the front end, what's critical for us is our basis. So a lot of times when we're talking about commercial real estate, the first thing you look at is your cap rate. We look at our cash flow going in, but more importantly, we're looking at our basis, like how much are we paying per lot? Because if the market rent is $450, but the rent when we buy it is $200, which is relatively common, that cap rate may not mean a whole lot. Plus, it's only 60% occupied. But if we can buy it at a certain, $20,000 pad, $25,000 pad, then with the infill, as well as bringing the rents to market, then we know the rest of it will take care of itself.
You just mentioned buying like 50 homes to go on the lots. That's a substantial amount of investment. Are those cash deals? Are you financing those? I mean, how do you swing the arrangement on putting 50 new homes on your lot that you're then going to turn around and sell?
It is a significant capital investment. So here's kind of how we're structured. And I think a lot of companies like us are structured the same way, where you're able to secure some financing through, there's a myriad of lenders out there that will provide financing for you to basically floor plan these homes. So, and they'll give you 100% of the invoice cost. So let's say that home right now, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, kind of mid-grade Clayton homes, costs about $50,000. So they'll pay for 100% of that. They'll loan you the money for 100% of that. But that same home costs money to transport it, costs money to set it, put it on blocks, hook up the utilities, put skirting around it, put decks on it. And so typically we're another $25,000 into it, and that's cash out of our pocket to do that portion of it. So basically what we do when we raise money for a new community or a new portfolio, the first 3 years of infill that we have, we raise the capital for that infill. So that's part of the money that we raise. Past the third year, we don't, as you can imagine, Brian, if you raise money, but when you start and then 4 years later you're using that money, it's like, well, shoot, there's a prep you got to pay for all that money in the meantime. So basically, once we get past the 3 years in our model, we're using operating income to continue kind of that infill. And at that point, if you put 50 new homes in a specific community, there's a lot of value creation there. So it could be something refinance or that sort of thing as well.
What's your profit on that? If you're spending $50,000 for a 3-bed, 2-bath home, another $25,000 to set it on the lot, what do you typically sell that for?
$75,000.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we don't. I mean, we might sell it for 80, but we don't really make money. That's not what we make money. The return is basically the fact that's now a very sticky resident that is paying you lot rent every month. So if we say that lot rent is $450 a month, and your marginal cost at that point is pretty low, right? Because you've already got your manager and you've got whatever. So vast majority of that new lot rent is going to go directly to the bottom line. So if you just run a 7 cap projection on 400 a month times 12, that's going to be $65,000. So that's where the value creation comes in.
You're also vertically integrated. So you've built a whole business and company around your model there. Can you talk a little bit about building that business and what it looks like today?
I can only smile because otherwise I'd cry, Brian. I really had no idea when I got in the business that it was going to be so much work. So what we found is that in order, first of all, we'll talk about the first part, which is the management, the property management. There aren't many choices for third-party property managers in our space. And because of the heavy lifting that goes in with some of the things I've talked about, like the infill, or even like we've had to replace infrastructure. I mean, these aren't things that property managers are really suited for. They're not really, that's not part of what they're used to doing. So they don't really have those contacts or those capabilities. So we self-manage everything. That's number one. But then as we started getting into this business, of course, as we've shared over the last few minutes, it's all very much a value add strategy. And there's significant construction that needs to be done, mostly what we would call horizontal, meaning kind of underground utilities, water lines, sewer lines, electrical, grading, drainage has been another big one. That these are all things that are kind of plague mobile home parks, because a lot of these, not many mobile home parks are getting built anymore. So almost every park you run into is 30 years old or older, and there's an expiration date on a lot of those materials that were used. So additionally, in addition to the property management, we now have our own construction company. We have crews right now in 4 different markets that are doing anything from building a brand new RV park. That's kind of our main construction crew. We're pouring new concrete pads. We're renovating homes. That's kind of, you get an idea of the sort of things that we have these crews doing. We have RVs or homes that they're living in. We have equipment. They're kind of moving around as we need them in different geographies inside of our company.
This is like a traveling crew that just goes to all 100 or so of your communities when the work is there.
That's exactly right. You get asked sometimes by other operators if, we have capacity, and we've got 3 years of projects completely mapped out for these guys. So there's a lot for them to do. But it's made a difference for us. It's just, I can give, Brian, if you don't mind, I'll give you a quick example. So we kind of birthed the idea. We had a large community in Louisville, Kentucky, and actually south of Louisville, Radcliffe. And we knew when we bought it that there were some issues with the sewer lines. We didn't understand exactly how serious. We kind of scoped part of it, but it turned out that there were 2 different sections that were built at different times. Anyway, we soon found that there were major sewer problems, and we were going to need to redo the sewer lines for this entire community. We're talking like 45 acres, 311 spaces, one of our biggest communities. And we didn't know anybody in Radcliffe, Kentucky, but we kind of got a scope of work together, and then we sent it out to bid. And I'm getting fuzzy on the math at this point, but I'm pretty sure our lowest bid was 1.7 million. And I know we had bids over $3 million to do this project. I can tell you that was not in our budget. That was not in our pro forma. We said, hey, we can't have sewer coming up out of the ground. Like, we have to fix this problem. And there was a contractor that I knew had done some work for me personally on actually my house in Knoxville, Tennessee. And this guy was super talented. And he had built mobile home parks. This is part of it. As I got to know him more, I'm like, man, you're really, and he starts giving me his background. So I called him and said, look, can we send you up there? We'll pay you time and materials. And he had a pretty good idea of like what he thought it would take. We solved that for less than $200,000.
Wow. That's a big savings.
A huge thing, right? I mean, otherwise, like, we're totally blowing our budget. We'd have to go make a capital call to investors because we didn't have that amount of money and that sort of thing. And so that's when we realized, you know what, we've run into this sort of thing before where we know we're getting gouged because we don't know people in that market, and you know, contractors are all busy and that sort of thing. And so now we're leveraging that team. We just finished our first full development in Norfolk, Nebraska with that team. And they were able to deliver those pads for about $27,000 a pad. I mean, we don't know anybody that's doing it for less than 50. So it's created tremendous value for the company.
What does the rest of your team look like? I mean, you've got this great construction crew that goes out. They're 3 years scheduled out at this point. But who else is on your team?
It's taken a long time to kind of build the team that we have, but we've got our CFO. We're completely remote at this point. So I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. Our CFO's in San Diego, California, and our director of accounting, they're both in San Diego. The rest of the accounting team is in the Philippines. So we have 13 full-time direct employees. They're Saratoga employees in the Philippines. And then, the big part of our team is our operation. So our Steve Sacker, our COO, is in Nashville, Tennessee. And then we've got district managers, division managers, and then the community managers. And that's really where the rubber meets the road. And they're out there, delivering notices, making sure rent gets paid. People are, following the rules, the guidelines, that sort of thing. We've got maintenance techs as well that are there, in the field on the ground. So we actually have, not including the construction company, we have about 115 employees, another 12 or so on the construction side.
Sam, how would people find out more about you or get a hold of you?
I love talking mobile home parks and happy to talk to anybody about them. Email is sam@Saratoga, which is SARATOGA, Saratoga Group.com. Also, our company and myself, pretty active on LinkedIn as well. So you can definitely see some activity there from us. And yeah, like I said, love talking about the space and happy to talk with anybody about it.
What is your favorite hack or app?
We didn't really get into this, Brian, but we love tech at our company. I think my favorite recent life hack is notaries. I have to notarize things every week, but sales, refis, or purchases mostly. And so we've got an electronic notary system, I guess I'll call it, that saves me, I would say, 5+ hours a month. That doesn't sound like a lot, but you know what? When you're on vacation in Mexico and you got to notarize something, that's when you're like, I have got to figure this out. Because I can tell you, it is very hard to find a notary when you're overseas. So anyway, if anybody wants to learn more, reach out to me and I can kind of tell you.
Is it an app that allows you to electronically notarize? I mean, I thought the whole point of notarization was to be in person. So you figured out a way around that?
Exactly. Well, there are some electronic notarizations out there, but not a lot of companies don't take them. So it's kind of a kludge that we've put together. But yeah, like I said, probably not enough time to go into all the details, but if anybody wants to know more, they can reach out to me.
Sam, thanks for coming on the show today and talking about mobile home manufactured communities, manufactured home communities. Real need for those. I mean, they can be quite nice, and it is truly a solution to the affordable housing crisis that we have in this country. And I think you're doing a great job changing that perception for the better. And I appreciate you sharing your strategies with us today. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate it.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's HIG investor.com.